Every once in a while, I get bored and just scroll online or on TV to watch something random. I did this with Failsafe, made in 1964, directed by Sidney Lumet, and now it's one of my favorite films of all time. In fact, it's my favorite thriller of all time. And I just had one of those moments again with a film called Patterns, written by Rod Serling, even before he started really working on The Twilight Zone. I never heard of it, and not many people have. There's not too much information about it online, other than that we know that it was a teleplay originally written by Rod Serling. To put it in layman's terms, the film is about a man from a small town being hired by a large corporation in New York City to work there as an executive, yet he finds his morals tested between him wanting power and respect while also not wanting to put others down and becoming a man of greed. Now, I wish to say that Rod Serling, I honestly have some problems with. To me, his writing tends to be too black and white, things too bipolar to the extreme. One being the absolute right way, the absolute correct thing that needs to happen, and the other one being the complete and total moral opposite of that, the bad guys. Now, that being said, not all of his writings, as I will say here, are like this. And I've also made it a point that his political leanings tends to be vastly opposed to mine, but that's never stopped me before from liking someone's work. Again, you can hate the artist, but love their art. And that being said, I don't believe all of Rod Serling's scripts are like that. And this is by far not saying that I don't like Rod Serling. I love Rod Serling and many of his scripts. His Planet of the Apes idea was fantastic. Many of his Twilight Zone episodes are just utter works of art. He's a fantastic writer. It's just that sometimes I believe he's too black and white. Now, when I heard the outline for Patterns, I said, oh Jesus, here we go again. But I clicked it because, well, it's Rod Serling. And I find what he does right, by God, the man absolutely gets right. At least in terms of cases like this, where it kind of tends to show a very black and white story. And by the end of the film, I found myself loving all of these characters and realizing there never was a true villain throughout the whole movie. There was definitely an antagonist for sure, but never once was he really the bad guy. And it was then that I realized, thinking over it for a long time, that this was not just a good film, it was a masterpiece. There's no action, there's hardly any music, no crazy cinematography, just performances, a strong script, and great directing. Usually I hate movies like this, where the hero is up against the big guys with less than stellar morals compared to his own. So what made me like these people? What made me sit back and enjoy this when I hate so many films tackling the same topic? It's because Rod Serling made his characters the definition of gray. They are not black and white. They all have genuine flaws to overcome. Many admit that they have these flaws, and most try to overcome them either by themselves or with the help of others. They all have good qualities, be it fiscal responsibility, such as the business owner himself, or responsibility to the workers, such as another character, or empathy, or even selfishness. And yes, I tend to think genuine selfishness is a good quality. Everyone in this movie have these qualities, but four stand out, as they should. You have Staples, our protagonist, Ramsey, our antagonist, and Briggs, our moral center, along with Staples' wife, played by one of my favorite actresses of all time, Beatrice Straight. She played in Sidney Lumet's Network, and though she only has, 4 minutes of screen time in that movie, she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, and by God is it well deserved. Staples is the guy who is modest, but does want to go higher up, hence why he agreed to come all the way out to New York from his small town. He's full of fresh ideas, he's caring, and overall, very good-natured. But he wants to better himself, and is tempted to step over Briggs to do it, and is tempted to take full credit for something he didn't actually do. Ramsey is a genius at fiscal responsibility, at company growth, at finding people who are good at their job. But he lacks compassion and empathy, seeing only profits, numbers, and facts. Briggs has a heart of gold, and will defend the workers tooth and claw even though he's a bit naive, but he can't adapt to a changing world and thus is old-fashioned and on his way out the door. Staples' wife, Nancy, wants what is best for her husband and is loving and caring, But she is the one who tempts Staples to push Briggs under the table, lying to Ramsey that Staples had written these new plans that the entire film focuses around. Staples gives Briggs' son a rifle for a gift and even takes him out shooting. My God, how the times have changed. Showing he always has time for those around him and generally wants not only for the people to like him, but also to let them know that he likes them. And it's funny when you compare that, how warm Staples is to Briggs' son, that Ramsey simply just says hi to Briggs' son and tells him to keep taking vitamins. Again, showing that he is extremely fact-based. He does not say it sternly, it's just as a matter of fact. And often Ramsey is right about business affairs. He yells too much and screams and gets angry, but never do I really sit back and say I don't understand his position. In fact, I relate to Ramsey a lot on a personal level because I tend to be like that. I tend to get very passionate about things that I feel are absolutely right in terms of the way how I run my business, and I explode. And so does Ramsey, so I actually really sympathize with him as a character. And that's a flaw of mine. Yelling and exploding. And it's the same as Ramsey's, but we'll get into that more a little later. We think Nancy, Staples' wife, is going to become basically like a Lady Macbeth, yet when Briggs dies, she doesn't tell Staples, who had become close to Briggs by that point, to get a backbone, like what Ramsey would have said. She actually goes into the bar and comforts him. She wants to know he's eaten. She hugs him. She knows that he's going to be taking it tough, and she comforts him like a good wife should. A married couple are together through better and for worse, and Nancy pulls through on that. The film could have easily have just said, grow a backbone, and yelled at her and made her a villain, along with Ramsey, quote-unquote, but the film does something smarter, and actually gives her nuance, and actually makes her a true character, despite her not having that much screen time either. Briggs trusts Staples, and he knows Staples knows this. But Staples wants Briggs' job, so instead of telling Briggs what Ramsey's plan was to be upright and honest with Briggs, and that is that Ramsey wants Staples to replace Briggs, Staples instead tries to get Briggs angry and basically have him quit. And Briggs will have none of this. Briggs is the moral superior throughout the film, and often is the punching bag. Yet he constantly forgets his own needs, even his own family. Twice, Briggs forgets to see his son at a baseball game. And it is his son who must remind him to take his medicines and to rest once in a while. It is also hinted that Briggs has a bit of a drinking problem with the bottle of scotch he is always on his desk. Briggs is thinking of others so much that it ultimately kills him and leads to the final confrontation of morals between he and Ramsey. Nancy lies to Ramsey at their dinner party, saying that Staples wrote the whole plan and that Briggs had nothing to do with it. This is not done because she doesn't like Briggs. It's done because she genuinely loves Staples and knows that he really wants Briggs' job. And when Staples confronts her on it, she does make some good points. If he was so morally against taking credit, why didn't he stop her? Why didn't he protest Ramsey all the way? And Staples has nothing to say in response to this because she is right. And that's really wonderful and complex stuff there. I love eating things like this up in works focused on a study of characters and their flaws and their strengths. Ramsey is ultimately correct in his assessment of Briggs. His heart is always in the right place, but Briggs just can't cope with the new way business is done. And though Ramsey takes it too far, constantly trying to force Briggs to resign instead of being honest with him and the facts are facts, but if Ramsey was to sit and talk to Briggs, it would be out of character. That requires sympathy and empathy, something Ramsey has a hard time dealing with because of how he was raised. You see, it's explained that Ramsey's father built the business and handed it to Ramsey when he died. And while Briggs sings the rightful praises of Ramsey's father for his compassion and his own genuine smarts, it is clear that Ramsey's dad never was like that at home. It's inference that Ramsey's father, too, worked so hard that he forgot all about himself and his own family, thus affecting Ramsey's childhood development and thus his adulthood. These characters all build to the final confrontation between Staples, Ramsey, and Briggs over the ownership of a future plan development. Again, that's what the story all revolves around, that small, simple plot device. While Briggs is saying it is his work with Staples, Staples never puts up much of a defense with Briggs. He does, don't get me wrong, but it was lackluster at best. And Briggs gets so mad, he leaves and dies of a heart attack. I believe it's a heart attack. It's inference that it's a heart attack. Because we know that it is his heart that killed him. And like reality, it takes something horrible and traumatic for these people, Ramsey and Staples specifically, to realize that they don't necessarily need to change themselves, but simply take a step back and look at who they are, what they are, and their relationship with friends and family. When Briggs dies because of a confrontation with Ramsey, we expect Ramsey to just go on because time is money. Things keep moving. But he goes into Briggs's office instead, shuts the door behind him, and just sits there, clearly saddened and blaming himself over Briggs's death. They had a verbal confrontation, and it is established that Briggs had literally a weak heart. He's constantly seen taking pills for it. His son is even checking up on him all the time to make sure that he's taking his medicine. So it's foreshadowed that this is what was probably going to kill Briggs in the end. But what really sold me that this was a masterpiece was the ending scene. I was expecting Staples to quit, like he says he's going to, and walk away, and Ramsey to get his just desserts. But that doesn't happen. Both men yell at each other, both men scream, and things get heated. But in the end, Ramsey realizes, now that Briggs is gone, that he does need a conscious voice. That he does need a voice of reason, a voice of consciousness. One that Staples has, and generally wants Staples to stay and help him continue this business. And to my surprise, Staples agrees, under heavy circumstances, but he keeps his job and remains with the company. Both men know they need each other, and they balance each other out, despite their vastly different opinions on matters. And despite Staples saying that he hates Ramsey's guts, I think he respects the man nonetheless, because Ramsey is the opposite of him, just as Staples is the opposite of Ramsey. You get two vastly different viewpoints coming together and having the opportunity to make something better out of this. As I said before, I find a lot of Rod Serling's work to be too black and white, and what I just said, with the extremes of personalities kind of fit together and mold, is the perfect counter to my own argument. But Serling did something here that I admire, and that is making everybody a shade of gray. Instead of having it as an outcome where Staples leaves Ramsey high and dry, they instead come together and actually agree that they need to work together, and that it took the death of Briggs for them to truly see their flaws and how both men could, for lack of a better term, complete each other. This is an extremely difficult thing to write, something I have yet to even come close to mastering. And it is truly this script, mixed with the direction and the performances, that makes this more than just a white-collar 50s film. I was blown away by just how complex this relationship was, and loved how, in Serling's style, I started expecting one outcome, and instead got another, with both men coming together to not fight and butt heads, but to be the other's equal and a complement. You can watch the movie on YouTube for free, and please do. You really won't regret it. This is an excellent film featuring, in all honesty, some of the most amazing performances I've ever seen in a film, and this is just an unexpected masterpiece. So please go on there and watch Patterns, written by Rod Serling. So go on Facebook, like Aid Productions, join Geeks for all up-to-date information there on what we're doing. Stay tuned for more information on my new film that's coming out, Sierra, that we're making. Big news on the way about that. Follow our website, and in the end, this is Adam Noyce of Aid Productions saying, sayonara.